My mom destroyed my relationships because they reminded her of her past, so I reminded her therapist why age is just a number. My mother has been using the same excuse since she turned 45. My dad traumatized her, so now she's entitled to prove she's still got it with any male that enters our home. And I don't mean she flirts a little at PTA meetings. I mean she systematically seduces every single boy I've ever cared about. The trauma in question? My dad traded her in for Ashley, a 25-year-old, from accounting. But there's always a piece of the story she leaves out. He left after she was physically attacking him almost every single day. Bruised ribs, a black eye, everything. The police didn't care because he had to be a man. And because she convinced my dad that I encouraged her hitting him, he went no contact with us both. Luckily, she never hit me. But she did do something almost equally as bad, kissing my boyfriends. It started small. Freshman year, my friend Jake came over for a group project. Mom appeared in yoga pants and a push-up bra, bent over to look for her reading glasses, right in front of him for 5 minutes. A week later, I found them making out in our kitchen. He was 15. She said I was being dramatic, that he reminded her of her youth. Then came Connor, my sophomore homecoming date. She decided to volunteer at the last minute and spent the entire night pulling him aside to check if we needed anything. 2 weeks later, my best friend saw his car at our house while I was at practice. I came home to find his Letterman jacket in her bedroom. She'd convinced him that experienced women understood men better. We'd been dating for 3 months. Each time I tried going to the local, extremely rural police station, showed them her messages to my underage ex-boyfriends, pictures he'd sent her. I expected the officers to arrest her, or at least tell her not to do it again. But no, the officers just smirked and said, damn, if I was that age, I'd want her too. Not really a crime when they're willing. They did nothing. By junior year, I'd learned to lie. Mom, I'm not dating anyone. Meanwhile, I'd been with Marcus for 6 months. Different schools, no social media overlap. Told him my mom was going through something, and we needed to keep distance. I made one mistake though. She saw the corsage receipt in my car. A prom date? How exciting. I'll do your makeup. The night of prom, she insisted on pictures. Just a few with mom. 45 minutes of poses later, she was adjusting Marcus's bow tie, touching his chest, telling him he must work out. When we tried to leave, she started crying about missing her own prom, how dad never appreciated her youth. Marcus hugged her to be polite. She held on too long. I dragged Marcus out early, apologizing the whole way. He was genuinely disturbed. That was intense. I see why you kept me away. He promised to block her on everything, said he'd never let her get to him like she did with the others. I'm not just some high school kid. I can handle a desperate housewife. 2 days later, his best friend sent me a snap. It was a blurry photo of my mom in the McDonald's drive-thru with Marcus in the passenger seat. I called Marcus immediately. No answer. I sped home and used my key quietly. Found them in the living room, her head on his shoulder, his arm around her, both half-dressed on the couch. She was wearing my perfume. She looked up with those practiced tears. Honey, I'm so sorry. He just reminds me of my old self, of feeling wanted again. Marcus couldn't even look at me, just grabbed his shirt and left. Later, he texted that she'd been sending him pictures for days, that he'd tried to resist but she knew exactly what to say, that he was sorry but couldn't help himself, but I was done crying. Now, it was her turn. But I was too young to do any real damage yet, so I played the long game. Fast forward 3 years when I finally turned 19. My mom was still going to the same sleazy therapist who validated everything she did. Doctor, Peterson says you need to give me grace while I heal, was practically her mantra. But there was one thing I did like about him. Whenever my mom brought him to our house for a cleansing with white sage, I'd feel his greedy eyes run along my body, and now I could legally make her understand how I felt. I booked the appointment using a fake name, paying cash at the reception desk while mom was at her weekly hair appointment. The receptionist barely glanced up as she handed me the intake forms. My hands trembled slightly as I filled them out, creating a fictional history of mother issues that would mirror everything mom had been telling Peterson for years. The waiting room smelled like lavender and desperation. I watched other clients leave his office, their faces puffy from crying, clutching tissues. When my turn came, Peterson opened the door himself, his eyes scanning me with practiced concern before settling into something else entirely. His office was exactly what I'd expected. Leather furniture, diplomas on the walls, a box of tissues strategically placed on every surface. I settled into the patient chair, making sure my phone was positioned just right in my pocket. So, what brings you here today? His voice was smooth, therapeutic. I let my voice crack slightly. My mother, she's destroying my life. The words came out exactly as I'd rehearsed them in the car. She's a narcissist who can't stand to see me happy. Peterson leaned forward, notepad ready. I fed him the same phrases mom used. Emotional terrorism, weaponized vulnerability, toxic enmeshment. His pen moved faster with each familiar term. My phone buzzed. Mom, texting about dinner plans. I pulled it out to respond, maintaining eye contact with Peterson as I typed. The wallpaper, a photo of mom and me at her birthday dinner last month, filled the screen. Peterson's eyes caught the image. His pen stopped moving. Is that your mother? He gestured toward the phone. I quickly locked the screen, letting vulnerability flood my features. We have such a complicated relationship. She insists on these photos, these perfect family moments, but behind closed doors. I let the sentence trail off, watching him process this information. Sometimes the most damaging relationships are with those who should protect us most. His hand reached across to pat mine briefly. Given what you've shared, I'd like to suggest we meet twice weekly. The trauma you're describing requires intensive work. The session ended with him walking me to the door, his hand lingering on my shoulder just a moment too long. You're very brave for seeking help. Not everyone has that strength. Mom called the second I reached my car. Where are you? The library closes at 5 on Wednesdays. Just leaving now. Got caught up in research. The lie came easily. Well, hurry home. Dr. Peterson had to cancel our evening session. Some emergency with a new client. Her voice carried that edge of suspicion that had been growing lately. At home, I found her in my room, going through my dresser drawers. She didn't even try to hide it. What are you doing? I'm worried about you, honey. You've been so secretive lately. She held up a receipt from the coffee shop near Peterson's office. This isn't near the library. I met a study group there after. Don't lie to me. She moved closer, and I caught the scent of her perfume, the same one she'd worn the night with Marcus. I know when you're hiding something. That's when she dropped the bomb. I installed a tracking app on your phone. For your safety, of course. Imagine my surprise when it showed you nowhere near the library today. My mind raced. I'd need a burner phone, and fast. The next morning, she insisted on driving me. I'll drop you at the library myself. Can't have you getting distracted again. I had no choice but to play along. She watched me walk through the library doors, even waited until I was inside. I pretended to browse for 5 minutes before slipping out the back exit. The bus to Peterson's office took 20 minutes. I arrived flustered and late. I'm so sorry, I gasped as his receptionist let me in. No worries at all. Peterson appeared with a glass of water, guiding me to his office with a hand on my lower back. Controlling parents often create these kinds of scheduling difficulties. He sat closer this time, our knees almost touching. Have you considered that your mother's behavior might be escalating because she senses you pulling away? Meanwhile, Mom had discovered my deception. She stormed into the library, demanding to see security footage. The elderly librarian called me later to warn me. Mom had seen me leave on the bus, and she knew exactly which route it took. After my session, Peterson walked me out through the back door. I don't usually do this, he said, leading me to where his car was parked. But given your situation, perhaps we should meet somewhere more discreet. Coffee, maybe? To continue our conversation without the formal constraints of the office. His wedding ring was conspicuously absent. That would be helpful, I agreed, knowing Mom was probably canvassing the area. She'd already started calling my friends. Alicia texted me a warning. Your mom just called. Told her you mentioned getting help but didn't say where. She sounded crazy. Peterson handed me his business card, but he'd written his personal cell on the back. For emergencies, or if you just need someone to talk to. I made it home before Mom, but she was waiting in the dark living room. Mascara streaked down her cheeks. In her hands was my journal, the one I'd hidden under my mattress. How could you write these things about me? She quoted passages about her behavior with my boyfriends, her manipulation tactics. After everything I've done for you? You mean like sleeping with every guy I've ever dated? Your father abandoned us both. Do you know what that does to a woman's self-worth? She stood, moving closer. And now you're keeping secrets, sneaking around, just like he did. I noticed she was wearing my perfume again, the one she'd stolen for her night with Marcus. I need to see Dr. Peterson more often, she announced. He's the only one who understands what you're putting me through. 2 days later, she had her emergency session. That evening, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Peterson, your mother is very concerned about you. Perhaps we should coordinate our approaches to ensure you're getting consistent support. Would you be free for coffee Thursday? I screenshotted everything. He was moving faster than I'd anticipated. Mom found the burner phone receipt in my trash the next morning. I'd been careless, too focused on Peterson's texts to properly dispose of it. What is this? She cornered me in the kitchen, waving the receipt. It's nothing. She grabbed my wrist, her nails digging in. You don't get to have secrets from me. Not after everything. I yanked away, but her grip tightened. Something in her eyes had shifted from manipulation to genuine rage. You're just like your father, she hissed. Sneaking around, lying, making me look crazy. The bruise was already forming by the time she let go. I stared at the purple marks forming on my wrist, documenting them with my phone camera from multiple angles. The urgent care clinic was only 15 minutes away, but I needed to move carefully. Mom had retreated to her bedroom, probably calling Peterson to validate her actions. The doctor at urgent care examined my wrist with professional detachment, asking routine questions about how the injury occurred. I stuck to my rehearsed story about falling while reaching for something on a high shelf, my hand catching awkwardly on the edge. She nodded, but her eyes lingered on the distinct finger-shaped bruising pattern. These injuries are consistent with someone grabbing you, she said quietly, meeting my gaze. There are resources available if you need help. I shook my head, maintaining my story. She documented everything carefully, gave me care instructions, and let me leave without pushing further. The medical record would exist if I needed it later. The next morning, Mom had transformed into the perfect mother. Pancakes waited on the table, my favorite, with fresh strawberries arranged in a heart shape. She wore a soft cardigan instead of her usual low-cut tops, her makeup subtle and maternal. I made your favorite breakfast, she said, her voice honeyed with false remorse. We need to talk about yesterday. Dr. Peterson suggested we try a family session. He thinks it would help us work through our communication issues. I sat down carefully, keeping my bruised wrist hidden under the table. The pancakes tasted like manipulation, but I forced myself to eat while she outlined Peterson's new treatment plan for our dysfunctional dynamic. The family session was scheduled for that afternoon. Mom drove us there together, filling the silence with observations about my recent behavior, how concerned she was about my secretive nature, how Peterson was the only one who truly understood our situation. Peterson's office felt different with Mom there. She positioned herself perfectly, close enough to seem engaged, but angled to display her figure in the tight dress she'd changed into after breakfast. I recognized it immediately. It was mine, taken from my closet that morning. Thank you both for coming, Peterson began, his professional mask firmly in place. Family dynamics can be complex, especially when there are trust issues involved. Mom launched into her performance immediately. She spoke about my increasing detachment, my concerning secrecy, the way I'd been pulling away from healthy family bonds. Her hand occasionally touched her chest as she spoke, drawing Peterson's attention exactly where she wanted it. She's been lying about her whereabouts, Mom continued, tears threatening at the corners of her eyes. And I'm worried she might be developing inappropriate attachments to older men. It's a pattern I've noticed recently. Peterson's pen paused mid-word. His eyes flicked between us, processing this unexpected accusation. Mom's hand moved to rest on the arm of her chair, her fingers tracing small circles on the leather. That's quite a serious concern, he managed, clearly struggling with the dual knowledge of our separate sessions. What makes you think this might be happening? Mom leaned forward slightly, her voice dropping to a confidential whisper. She's been secretive about relationships, hiding things from me, and the way she looks at certain men. She trailed off, letting the implication hang in the air while touching Peterson's desk desk briefly, as if seeking support. I watched Peterson's discomfort grow. His usual therapeutic composure cracked slightly as Mom continued her performance, each gesture calculated to draw him in while painting me as the problem. When she mentioned my fixation on unavailable men, her hand briefly touched his arm. The session ended with Peterson suggesting individual work before attempting more family sessions. Mom's eyes narrowed slightly at this deflection, but she smiled and thanked him for his wisdom. As we prepared to leave, she made her move. Dr. Peterson, I know this is unusual, but would you consider a home visit? Sometimes seeing our environment helps therapists understand the full picture. Her fingers played with her necklace as she spoke. I could make dinner. We could discuss treatment options in a more relaxed setting. Peterson hesitated, his training warring with whatever Mom had awakened in him. That's not typically something Please, Mom interrupted, her hand briefly touching his. For my daughter's sake. I'm at my wit's end. He agreed to consider it and we left. In the parking lot, I intercepted him before he reached his car. We need to talk, I said quietly. Not here. That coffee shop near your apartment? His face flushed slightly. I don't think that's appropriate given what? That my mother is trying to seduce you? I kept my voice low but firm. We both know what's happening here. He glanced toward where Mom waited in her car, watching us through the windshield. Thursday, 3 p.m. Brevity coffee. He walked away quickly, not looking back. Mom followed me home in her car. I could see her in my rearview mirror the entire drive. At home, she cornered me in the kitchen. What were you discussing with Dr. Peterson? Just clarifying something about insurance? I lied smoothly. Her eyes searched mine for deception. He's a good man, the only one who sees through your manipulations. The irony of her statement would have been laughable if it weren't so twisted. Thursday arrived with Mom mysteriously deciding to run errands. I knew she was following me. I'd seen her car 3 vehicles behind mine on Main Street. At Brevity Coffee, I chose a table by the window where she could watch from across the street. Peterson arrived 5 minutes late, looking haggard. He sat across from me, his coffee trembling slightly in his hands. Your mother called me 6 times yesterday, he began. She's persistent. She's a predator, I corrected. Just like you. His face darkened. I'm trying to help both of you. By texting me privately? By suggesting we meet outside your office? I kept my voice calm, controlled. How long before you cross that line with me like you're about to with her? He reached across the table, his hand covering mine in what he probably thought was a comforting gesture. I let it stay there, knowing Mom was watching, documenting. His thumb traced small circles on my skin. You're in pain, he said softly. I can help you heal. My phone buzzed. Alicia, your mom just called my mom. Says you're seducing her therapist. What is happening? I pulled my hand back, showing him the text. His face paled. She's already spinning the narrative, I said. You should know she's watching us right now. Silver sedan across the street. He turned to look, and Mom's car pulled away quickly. Too quickly. She'd been caught. I returned home to find an intervention in progress. Mom had assembled her book club friends, 2 neighbors, and my Aunt Karen. They sat in our living room like a tribunal. Mom at the center in my favorite dress, playing the concerned mother to perfection. There she is, Mom announced as I entered. Sweetheart, your loved ones are here because they care about you. Aunt Karen spoke first. Your mother told us about your concerning behavior. This fixation on older men, the secretive meetings. We think you might benefit from inpatient treatment. For what? I asked, remaining standing. SX addiction, Mom said softly, tears already forming. It's not your fault. These things can be genetic. But seducing my therapist? That crosses a line. The room fell silent. I looked at each face, some concerned, some skeptical, all uncomfortable. Interesting, I said finally. Should we discuss Jake? He was 15 when you seduced him. Or Connor. His car was here while I was at practice. Or Marcus. You wore my perfume when you slept with him. The silence deepened. Mom's mask slipped for just a moment, raw fury flashing in her eyes before the tears returned. These delusions are exactly why you need help, she began. But Connor's mother stood up. Wait, Mrs. Patterson's voice was sharp. Connor told me something happened with an older woman. He wouldn't give details, but she stared at Mom with growing recognition. It was you. Mom stood abruptly. I won't sit here and be attacked by conspiracy theories. My daughter is sick, and you're enabling her delusions. She stormed out, but the damage was done. The gathering dispersed in awkward murmurs and exchanged glances. That evening, my phone lit up with a text from Peterson. Your mother canceled all appointments. We need to talk. My apartment tomorrow? 1247 Oak Street, apartment 3B. Her distinctive laugh floated down from an open window on the 3rd floor. I climbed the stairs quietly, finding apartment 3B's door slightly ajar. Through the crack, I could hear Mom's voice, low and seductive. She's always been jealous of me, Mom was saying. Even as a child, she competed for male attention. Her fathers, her teachers, any man who entered our lives. That must be difficult, Peterson's voice responded, but it lacked his usual therapeutic distance. You understand me, Mom continued. I heard movement, probably her moving closer. No one else sees how hard I try, how much I sacrifice. I positioned my phone to record through the door crack. Mom had removed her jacket, revealing a low-cut blouse I recognized from my own closet. She sat unnecessarily close to Peterson on his couch, her hand resting on his knee. Your daughter seems to think there's something inappropriate about our connection, Peterson said, but his protest was weak. My daughter wants everything I have, Mom replied, leaning closer. My clothes, my perfume, even my therapist. But you see through her, don't you? Peterson's resistance crumbled as Mom deployed the same tactics she'd used on Marcus. Her hand moved to his chest, her voice dropping to a whisper I couldn't quite catch. His hand covered hers. Maybe we should explore this connection, he said, his professional boundaries evaporating, to better understand your family dynamics. Mom's clothes were already sliding off when I backed away from the door. My foot caught a potted plant in the hallway, sending it crashing to the floor. Footsteps approached the door rapidly. I bolted down the stairwell, taking the steps 3 at a time. Behind me, I heard Peterson's door open fully, his voice calling out. I didn't stop until I reached my car, my hands shaking as I started the engine. For 3 years, I'd researched Dad's whereabouts online. His LinkedIn showed he worked at Morrison Industries across town. I'd never had the courage to reach out, but desperation drove me there now. The security desk wouldn't let me past without an appointment. I scribbled a note on visitor center stationery. She's doing it again. Check Dr. Peterson's license. It's already suspended. Your daughter needs help. I was walking back to my car when a voice called out behind me. Excuse me? I turned to find a polished woman in her early 30s, her face familiar from careful social media stalking. Ashley, Dad's wife. I recognize you, she said carefully. From your mother's Facebook. She tags you sometimes. My throat tightened. I just needed to. He's been wanting to contact you, Ashley interrupted. But the lawyers said to wait until you were 18. Then we lost track of you when your mom made her profiles private. She led me back inside, past security with a quick explanation. The elevator ride to the 5th floor felt eternal. Ashley knocked on an office door labeled David Morrison, Senior Analyst. Dad looked older. Gray streaked his temples where there had been only brown. Lines creased his face. But his eyes, the same green as mine, filled with tears the moment he saw me. Oh God, he whispered. Is it true? The note? I nodded, unable to speak. He crossed the room in 3 strides, pulling me into a hug that felt like coming home. I hired a private investigator, he said into my hair. I know about Jake, Connor, Marcus. I know what she did to them. I've been building a case, but you were already 18 by the time I had enough evidence. Ashley quietly closed the office door, giving us privacy while standing guard. The PI found something else, Dad continued, pulling back to look at me. Peterson lost his license 2 years ago for inappropriate conduct with a client. Your mother's been seeing an unlicensed therapist, paying cash to keep it quiet. The pieces clicked into place. That's why he was so eager to cross boundaries. He's got nothing left to lose, except his freedom, Dad said grimly. Practicing without a license is a crime, and if he's done this before, he showed me a file the PI had compiled. 3 other women, all single mothers, all referred by mom to Peterson. All had similar stories of boundary violations, though none had pressed charges. We need more evidence, Dad explained. Something concrete that proves the connection between your mother and Peterson's illegal practice. My phone buzzed. A photo message from Mom, her and Peterson in bed, her smile triumphant. The accompanying text read, "Now you know how it feels to have something stolen." I showed Dad the photo. His jaw tightened. She has no idea what she's just confessed to. We spent the next 2 hours with Dad's lawyer, building a strategy. Connor's mother had already reached out to Dad's PI, offering her son's text messages as evidence. Jake's parents were considering the same. I moved in with Dad and Ashley that night, packing my essentials while Mom was still at Peterson's apartment. Their guest room had been waiting for me, Ashley explained, since the day I turned 18. Mom discovered my absence the next morning. She called 17 times before I blocked her number. Then she started on social media, posting about her healing journey with a wonderful man who understands true trauma. She tagged Peterson's defunct practice page. The comment section exploded. Peterson's ex-wife wrote simply, "That's why I divorced him. Check court records." Within hours, 3 more women had commented with similar stories. Dad's PI reached out to each one, building a network of victims. I met Sarah at a small diner downtown. She clutched a manila folder with shaking hands, her story spilling out between sips of coffee. Peterson had been her therapist during her divorce. The relationship turned inappropriate within weeks. When she tried to report him, he threatened to use her session recordings against her in custody court. "But I kept everything," she said, sliding the folder across to me. "Bank records showing your mom referred me, text messages where they discussed payment, even recordings of him admitting he wasn't licensed anymore." The final piece of evidence came from Mom herself. In her car, abandoned in Dad's driveway during one of her drunken attempts to confront me, police found a box of session recordings. She'd been secretly taping Peterson's sessions with his victims, apparently planning to blackmail him if needed. On the recordings, Mom and Peterson could be heard laughing about their pathetic clients, including detailed discussions of how to manipulate each woman. In one recording, Mom coached Peterson on exactly what to say to make clients fall for him. The prosecutor played one recording for me. Mom's voice, clear and cruel. "My daughter? She's even easier than her boyfriends were. So desperate for approval, she'll believe anything, just like all of them." The trial was swift. Mom tried to play victim one final time, claiming Peterson had manipulated her into everything, but the recordings destroyed any credibility she had left. When I testified about Jake, Connor, and Marcus, the jury's faces hardened with each detail. Peterson got 5 years and lifetime registration as a SX offender. Mom got 18 months for conspiracy, fraud, and contributing to the delinquency of minors. At sentencing, she looked directly at me. "You're just like me now," she said, her voice carrying across the courtroom. "You destroyed someone for revenge. How does it feel?" The words stung because they held a grain of truth. I had orchestrated her downfall as carefully as she'd orchestrated my pain. But as I looked at Sarah and the other women in the gallery, women who finally had justice, I knew the difference. My revenge had freed others. Hers had only ever served herself. Dad and Ashley took me in permanently. I started real therapy with a licensed psychologist who specialized in family trauma. Mom's letters from prison went straight into a box, unopened. I wasn't ready to read her words, to see what new manipulations she might attempt from behind bars. 3 years later, I was working as a victim advocate when the call came in. A teenage girl, voice trembling, describing how her mother had started acting weird around her boyfriends, how she'd found inappropriate messages, how no one believed her because her mother was beautiful and charming and would never do something like that. I took down her information carefully, remembering my own voice at that age, my own desperation to be believed. The cycle was threatening to continue, but this time, there was someone who understood, someone who would listen, someone who knew that mothers could be predators too, and that beautiful women could be the most dangerous of all. "I believe you," I told her, the words I'd needed to hear for so long, "and I'm going to help you." I stared at the teenage girl's intake form, her handwriting shaky and uncertain. 16 years old, same age I'd been when Connor happened. Her mother sounded exactly like mine, beautiful, charming, everyone's favorite PTA volunteer. The girl's voice cracked as she described finding texts between her mother and her ex-boyfriend. "She says I'm making it up for attention," the girl whispered, "that I'm jealous of her looks." I scheduled an emergency meeting with her school counselor, then called Dad's lawyer. We'd set up a protocol for these cases, document everything, involve mandatory reporters, create paper trails that couldn't be ignored like mine had been. That evening, Mom's first parole hearing notification arrived. 18 months had passed faster than I'd expected. The victim impact statement form sat on my desk for 3 days before I could bring myself to fill it out. Peterson had been transferred to a different facility after an incident with another inmate. His ex-wife sent me updates occasionally. He'd lost his appeal, been denied early release. The other victims had formed a support group that met monthly at a community center downtown. I attended one meeting sitting in the back row as Sarah led the discussion. 7 women total, all referred by Mom to Peterson over the years. They shared stories about rebuilding trust, setting boundaries, recognizing manipulation tactics. When they asked me to speak, I couldn't find the words. The teenage girl's case escalated quickly. Her school counselor mandated a CPS investigation after reviewing the evidence. Unlike my situation, these officers took it seriously. Times had changed, training had improved. The girl's mother was ordered to cease contact with any of her daughter's peers pending investigation. At 2 weeks before Mom's hearing, she sent a letter through her lawyer. I recognized her handwriting on the envelope, the same loopy script that had signed permission slips and forged Dad's name on divorce papers. Ashley found me staring at it in the kitchen. "You don't have to read it," she said gently. "Or you can read it with support. Your choice." I opened it alone in my room that night. Mom's words were carefully crafted, probably edited by her prison therapist. She wrote about understanding her actions, taking accountability, wanting to rebuild our relationship. But between the lines, I could still see her patterns: subtle blame shifting, minimizing, painting herself as a victim of circumstances. The parole hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday morning. Dad took the day off work to drive me there. In the parking lot, I spotted Connor's mother heading inside. She'd submitted her own statement about the lasting impact on her son. Inside the hearing room, Mom wore prison blues instead of her usual carefully chosen outfits. Her hair had gray roots, her face bare of makeup. She looked smaller somehow, older. When she saw me, her eyes filled with tears that might have been genuine. The parole board asked her about her rehabilitation progress. She spoke about therapy groups, accountability exercises, understanding the harm she'd caused. Her voice broke when she mentioned missing my college graduation, as if that was the real tragedy here. When my turn came to speak, I stood on shaking legs. I'd prepared a speech about second chances and rehabilitation. Instead, I found myself talking about the teenage girl who'd called our office, about the 7 women in Sarah's support group, about cycles that threatened to continue. "She's not ready," I said finally. "She's learned to say the right words, but she hasn't changed. She'll find new victims, new ways to manipulate. The pattern is too deep." Mom's mask slipped for just a moment, that familiar flash of rage before the tears returned. The board members took notes, their faces unreadable. Connor's mother spoke next, her voice steady as she described her son's struggles with trust, his therapy bills, the relationships he'd sabotaged because he couldn't believe anyone actually wanted him for himself. Jake's mother had sent a written statement about her son's anxiety, his fear of older women, how he'd dropped out of college after a professor reminded him of Mom. The board denied parole. Mom would serve her full sentence, eligible for review again in 6 months. As guards let her out, she looked back at me once. No words, just a look that promised this wasn't over. Outside, Connor's mother hugged me briefly. "You did the right thing," she said. "My son wanted to be here, but his therapist advised against it. He's doing better though. Started dating someone his own age." The teenage girl's case resolved 2 months later. Her mother accepted a plea deal. Probation, mandatory therapy, no contact with minors outside her family. Not perfect, but better than the nothing I'd gotten. The girl started attending our support group, the youngest member but not the only teen. Peterson was attacked again in prison, this time seriously enough to require protective custody. His ex-wife stopped sending updates after that. Sarah's group grew to 12 members, then 15. We moved to a larger room at the community center. Dad and Ashley announced they were expecting a baby. The news hit me harder than expected, jealousy mixing with genuine happiness for them. In therapy, I worked through feelings about the family Dad would have that didn't include Mom's poison. Ashley asked me to help decorate the nursery, a gesture that meant more than she probably knew. The teenage girl graduated from our program 6 months later. Her mother had violated probation by showing up at her daughter's school dance, claiming she just wanted to see her in her dress. Back to court, extended probation, stricter terms. The girl moved in with her father, started therapy, began to heal. Mom's second parole hearing approached. This time, I didn't attend. Connor spoke via video link, his voice stronger than his mother had described. Jake sent a statement through his lawyer. Marcus remained silent, but his absence spoke volumes. Parole denied again. Mom had been caught with contraband, a cell phone she'd been using to contact Peterson through a smuggled number. They'd been planning something, though the details remained sealed in her disciplinary file. I started dating Nathan, a social worker from the community center. He knew my history, had read about the case in training materials. Our first dates were cautious, both of us carrying our own damage. He'd grown up with an alcoholic father, understood family dysfunction in his bones. The night before Mom's release date finally arrived, I couldn't sleep. 3 years had passed since her conviction. Peterson still had 2 more to serve, but Mom would be free in 12 hours. Dad installed security cameras, changed the locks, updated the restraining order. She didn't come. Instead, a process server delivered papers 2 weeks later. Mom was suing for defamation, emotional distress, and destruction of property. Apparently the recordings I'd turned over to police. Her new lawyer was young, hungry, probably working for a percentage of whatever Mom thought she could extract. Dad's lawyer laughed when he read the filing. "She has no case. This is harassment through litigation. We'll countersue." The legal battles dragged on for months. Mom found work at a salon 40 miles away, telling coworkers she'd been wrongly imprisoned by a vindictive daughter. Someone always believed her story, at least at first. She cycled through 3 jobs in 6 months as the truth inevitably surfaced. Nathan proposed on a quiet Sunday morning, no fanfare, just the 2 of us in the kitchen I'd shared with Dad and Ashley. I said yes, understanding that building a healthy relationship would be daily work, constant vigilance against patterns I'd inherited. Mom showed up at our engagement party. Security removed her before she could make a scene, but not before she'd pressed a letter into my hand. I threw it away unread. Some cycles had to end with silence. The teenage girl from that first call became a peer counselor, helping other teens recognize predatory behavior from trusted adults. She spoke at high schools, community centers, anywhere that would listen. Her mother had found new victims, but now people knew to watch for the signs. Peterson died in prison 8 months before his release date. Heart attack, the official report said. His ex-wife called to tell me, her voice neutral. Mom posted about it on Facebook, grieving the loss of a great healer who understood true pain. The comments section told its own story of women who'd learned to recognize predators. At my wedding, Dad walked me down the aisle while Ashley held their toddler daughter. Mom's absence felt like presence, the space where she should have been filled with people who'd actually protected me. Connor sent a card. Jake's mother attended. Marcus remained a ghost, but his mother hugged me at the reception. I kept working at the advocacy center. Each new case a reminder that Mom wasn't unique. The patterns repeated. Charming mothers, trusting teens, systems that still sometimes failed. But more often now, we caught them. More often, someone listened. Mom started a blog about her wrongful conviction, gathering a small following of other alienated mothers. Dad's PI monitored it, documenting any threats or escalation. She posted old photos of us, edited narratives where she was always the victim. I stopped checking after she posted my prom photo with Marcus cropped out. 3 years after her release, Mom was arrested again. A 19-year-old boy, his mother's friend's son. The same pattern, the same tactics, but this time the boy recorded everything. She'd learned nothing, changed nothing. The cycle she'd accused me of perpetuating had always been hers alone. This time, I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no vindication. Just tired recognition that some people choose their patterns over everything else, even freedom. I was pregnant when the verdict came down. 5 years, no parole. Nathan held my hand as we watched the news coverage. Brief, local, just another predator facing consequences. Mom's beauty had faded, her charm worn thin. The reporter didn't mention me, focused instead on the brave young man who'd come forward. My daughter arrived 2 weeks early, perfect and screaming. As I held her, I thought about cycles and choices, about the patterns we inherit and the ones we break. Mom would never meet her, never have the chance to poison another generation. The advocacy center expanded, adding satellite offices in 3 counties. I trained new counselors, teaching them to recognize the signs everyone had missed with me. The teenage girl who'd started it all graduated college, became a lawyer specializing in family law. She sent updates occasionally, photos of her thriving despite everything. Some nights I still dreamed about Mom. Not nightmares exactly, just memories tinged with the sadness of what could have been. In the dreams, she was still beautiful, still charming, still choosing her hunger over her daughter's heart. But mornings came with Nathan's coffee, my daughter's laughter, work that mattered, the life I'd built from the ashes of what Mom had burned. It wasn't perfect. Trust remained difficult. Intimacy required constant work, and I checked locks twice before bed. The last time I saw Mom was on security footage from a grocery store near her halfway house. She looked old, ordinary, just another woman buying milk. No one turned to watch her anymore. Her power had always required an audience, and now she had none. I deleted the footage, closed that chapter. My daughter was learning to walk, stumbling between furniture with determination that reminded me of myself. She'd grow up knowing boundaries, understanding consent, recognizing manipulation before it could take root. The cycle hadn't broken, it had ended. Not with revenge or vindication, but with the simple act of choosing differently. Every day, every small moment, choosing to build instead of destroy, choosing to protect instead of consume. Mom would serve her time, possibly find new victims, definitely blame everyone but herself. But her reach had limits now, her patterns recognized, her power diminished to what it had always been, a desperate woman feeding on others' trust. I signed adoption papers for Ashley's second child, officially becoming the sister I'd already been. Dad cried at the ceremony, finally able to give me the family he'd always wanted us to have. Mom became a story we rarely told, a lesson learned, a past that no longer defined our future. The work continued. New calls, new cases, new cycles threatening to begin, but also new victories, new voices speaking truth, new systems learning to listen. Each small triumph proof that patterns could be broken, that daughters didn't have to become their mothers, that beauty without conscience was just another cage. My daughter took her first steps on a Tuesday afternoon, reaching for me with absolute trust. I caught her, held her close, promised silently to be the mother I'd needed. Not perfect, but present. Not consuming, but nurturing. The cycle ended with choice, and I chose her, chose us, chose the life Mom had tried to steal but couldn't. Because in the end, that's what broke the pattern. Not revenge or justice or even understanding, just the daily decision to be different, to choose love over hunger, protection over predation. The cycle Mom started ended the only way it could, with someone finally saying no, meaning it, and building something better from the ruins.